Hey there again, coming to you from an undisclosed underground location, just so you're on your toes. Got to keep them guessing. So, we finished up last time talking about feeders and branches, and a lot of the information in between those there and where we're picking up was going over things that we'd already talked about, uh, figuring box sizes and things like that. So you already know that. We can get through that, and we can pick up here where it talks about mounting outlet boxes. So we know when we're mounting an outlet box, I'm sure that everybody had a chance to nail on one of the plastic nailers when you were roughing in the house. But in case you missed that or something, um, that's the outlet box. Also, switch boxes, those would be an outlet box. Anywhere that there's a connection to a device, that's an outlet box. So, outlet box configurations are almost endless, and if you research the various methods of mounting these boxes, you would be astonished. There are just about any way you can imagine, plus a few ways to mount these boxes onto wood, metal studs, in between studs, different ways, different things that you need to be able to do in different situations. So somebody's come up with a way to do it. What you need to remember here, one of the key things that you need to know when a non combustible wall finish, such as plaster, masonry, or tile, is used, the box may be recessed 1/4 of an inch. Now, it doesn't sound like that'd be a lot, but that is enough to cause you some issues if you're having to use the screws that are in there. You might have to find different screws. You might have to do this or that. But sometimes you will rough in for a box to be flush with drywall. Say there's going to be just a drywall back behind uh, a countertop. They're going to have a short backsplash, and it's just going to be drywall. And then after you rough in and after everything's getting going, they've changed their mind. They're going to do tile all the way from the countertop up to the bottom of the cabinets. Well, do you have to go in and change your boxes out? Do you have to do? There's there's some leeway there. There's that 1/4 of an inch that you have to play with, where your box might not be flush like it would have been when you planned on it being in drywall. So when it's in non-combustible wall finish, remember that non-combustible wall finish is plaster, masonry, tile, then the box can be recessed 1/4 of an inch. That's just giving you a little leeway, giving you space for change orders. And everybody loves the change order because that's where the money's made. So your wiring devices includes various types of receptacles, switches, later to be used for lighting control. Switches are covered in Article 404, while regulations for receptacles can be found in Article 406 of the NEC. So there's those whole sections that are dedicated to switches. And the receptacles. So if you have a question about that, you can always refer to the NEC, and it will give you some clarification as far as what is code and what is not. As we move on, lighting controls, again, that's in a branch circuit. You're going to have your different ways that you're wiring up. We went over those in our pods. We talked about those. I believe you did those with Mr. Humphrey, and then we went over them again in the pods, where I was having you wire up just a regular switch where you bring in the power into the box and then out, and you carry your neutral into the box and out of the box up to, and then where you would run power to the switch or up to the fixture first, and then you would run a wire down to the switch and back up in the same jacket. Remember, I called that a dead man switch. And so there's those different ways, different methods that you can do that, different ways that you can go about having that ready. So in three-way switches, we talked about doing 3 ways and 4 ways. As everybody remembers, Levi got really crazy with the 4 ways and went through so many of them, but just showing how it could be done and how well you can do something like that. It doesn't matter. You just keep adding 4-way switches, and you keep adding the wire, and it'll just keep going. So, but 3-way switches are used to control, we know, where you have 2 switches and then the light. So 3-way switches, 1 or more lamps from 2 different locations. Thing you need to know, you have generally power at one end and switch leg at the other. And then here's your key. Here's the thing you need to know. The 2 remaining terminals are called traveler terminals. These terminals are used to connect 3-way switches together. Remember, those are, on a 3-way switch, you'll have 1 brass colored or gold colored screw, and then 2 black, or 2 brass and 1 black, or 1 silver, or 2 silver. They'll designate them different colors. The ones that go together, the ones that are the same color, those are going to be your travelers. Those are going to be the ones that you'll hook your travelers to. That's that wire that sends that signal back and forth between the switches and shows, hey, this one's on, this one's off, blah, 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 blah. But what you need to know is the 2 remaining terminals, whatever 2 are colored the same, will be your traveler terminals. The one that is odd, the one that has a different color than the 2, that will be your switch leg or your power. You have to keep that in mind as you're doing those. Now, 2 3-way switches may be used in conjunction with any number of 4-way switches to control a lamp or a series of lamps from any number of positions. So, remember looking at what Levi did in the pod for the open house. He put in several 4-ways in between, but on each end of that, on each end of all those 4-ways, had to be a 3-way switch. And that there is the what we're talking about here, the thing that you need to know about 4-way switches. The note here is 2 3-way switches may be used in conjunction with any number of four-way switches to control a lamp or a series of lamps from any number of positions. So you don't, just because it says four-way doesn't mean you have 3 switches in a lamp or 4 switches in a lamp. Any number of four-way switches. You can have as many as you want between, and it's still going to work. But you have to have a 3-way switch at each end. And that's how that works. It was very well laid out there to demonstrate, and something that I really enjoyed having there to show the people coming in. So if you have figure 52, you can see where it says up at the top there's a set of stairs, 6 or more stairs, 6 or more steps there, where 6 or more risers separate floor levels. A wall switch is required at each level to control stairway lighting. So if there are 6 or more steps up from one place to another, so if you have a split level house or a multi-level house, one of the first houses that I worked on around the Muncie area was for Dr. Rector. He has a multi-level house just north of town, and so anytime that there were more than 6 stairs in a row, code said we had to have a switch at the bottom and a switch at the top for the lighting for that set of stairs. Now I believe that even if it was 4 or 5, we would still put the switches there around. As a fairly large house, and it was one of those custom homes that you do what you'd want to do for yourself. A lot of times with a custom home, you're going to look at it as, what would I do if I had the money to spend and I was building this for myself? Those are the kind of suggestions that you want to throw out for a customer, especially with those custom homes. So the thing that you need to know, the thing that you really have to have in mind, control stairway lighting, a wall switch is required at each level when 6 or more risers or steps separate the levels. You have to keep that in mind. 6 or more as your cutoff. So moving on, talking about appliances, fixed loads, those things that are there. Electric heating. The use of electric heating in residential occupation has risen tremendously over the past decade or so, and the practice will no doubt continue. This is due to the following advantage of electric heating over most other heating systems. Around this area, the big rise in electric heating is due to the installation of heat pump systems. You put in a well that is used for the exchange of heat, and the heat is stored, and then when it's warm and is pulled out later, that is a lot of times backed up by a electric furnace for when that heat pump is no longer efficient, then the electric furnace will kick on. I did another home he was a contractor around that AEP actually had given him a break by making his new home so much electric. And one of the things was he had to install an electric furnace in part of the home. So he installed his electric furnace in the upstairs portion, and there was a large open living room with vaulted ceilings and a big walkway around. So that electric furnace wasn't going to run as much as if it was downstairs and put the gas furnace above. And it was one of those things that he was trying to keep cost as low as possible. But when you're talking about electric heating, there's a couple of things that you need to have in mind. You have to keep note of. One note is the initial installation cost is relatively inexpensive when compared to other types of heating systems. The initial installation cost is relatively inexpensive when compared to other types of heating systems. So you think you don't have to run gas piping, you don't have to run different things. If you're out where you can't get natural gas into your home, then you've got bottle gas, you've got LP, you got to have a tank, you got to have different things set up for that. So there's with the electric, it's running wire. We would run wire to it anyway for the air handler. It's just running a little bit more wire. And the wire, even though it's larger copper, you're still going to wind up with a little bit less expense initially than if you're running black pipe for gas, either LP or natural gas. So the initial installation is inexpensive, but also, as I talked about earlier, the other note, the thing you need to keep in mind, a heat pump has the unique ability to furnish more energy than it consumes. This is due to the fact that under certain outdoor conditions, electrical energy is required only to move the refrigerant and run the fan. Again, that heat pump under the right outdoor conditions is going to be able to only have to run to move the refrigerant and run the fan. So it's actually you're getting more out of it than you're actually putting into it. Another thing you need to keep in mind, conductors must be sized for 125% of the heater's nameplate rating. It's a good note there, something to really think of. That is on figure 53. One of the notes that you need to have there. You have to think it's going to, when it does have that draw, those are heat strips. Those are just a pure resistive load. So when it's that pure resistive load, it's going to need to have wire upsized for that ability to run where it can. So you have to upsize your wire 125% of the nameplate. Now, when we're talking about residential swimming pools, spas, and hot tubs, NEC recognizes the potential danger of electric shock to persons in swimming pools, wading pools, and therapeutic pools, or near decorative pools and fountains. So, with that, NEC Article 680. This is a good note, good thing to have down, good to have in mind. NEC Article 680 680 covers the specific rules governing the installation and maintenance of swimming pools, spas, and hot tubs. So you have this section, this article of the NEC 680, and it covers the specific rules for swimming pools, spas, and hot tubs. So that's something good to have in mind if you're ever asked to do something like that for someone. You'll have it in mind, you'll have it ready, it'll be there. When we're talking about this, at least one receptacle must be located at a minimum of 6 feet and no more than 10 feet from the inside wall of the hot tub. And this is for maintenance, cleaning equipment, and whatnot. You've got to have a receptacle located within that range of 6 feet to the inside wall of the hot tub. That's always that's something specific there. And 10 feet to the inside wall of the hot tub must be GFCI protected. So a receptacle within 10 feet of the inside wall must be GFCI protected. So that one has to be there that is no more than 6 feet. All receptacles must be located at least 6 feet from the inside of the wall of the hot tub, and it's got to be GFCI protected within 10 feet. So you're going to have a GFCI there. You'll have a maintenance disconnect. You'll have everything at the right distance. 7 foot 6 inches is the closest you can have a light or a paddle fan above. You have to have things around so that it's safe for people. So your minimum of 6 feet away, and you have to have it, if it's within 10 feet, it has to be GFCI protected. So when you start looking at different things going on with the electrical and looking at residential, there's a lot to be said in the NEC about the residential code, about what's going on residentially, and you need to be able to pull those things up. The more that you do it, the more that you're in the code book, the more that you will just immerse yourself within the code book. If you're on Facebook or you're on Instagram, you can look up a guy named Mike Holt. He is the one that does the test prep that I'm working through, and I was introduced by Mr. Humphrey to Mike Holt's system. Very good stuff, and Mike Holt has been doing a lot of things on Facebook. He's been doing live videos. I believe he's doing them live on Facebook as well as Instagram, and he does have a YouTube channel. So check him out. There's a lot of stuff, good stuff with code going on in there. He does a journeyman test prep as well as the master electrician test prep, depending on what you're going for, what you're looking at doing, or if you're looking to move out of Indiana, that journeyman could come in handy. Good friend of mine moved to Texas, and he had to get all of his paperwork and everything that he had been working as an electrician here for so long. He had enough hours in, and he had to go take his journeyman test for the company that he's working for down there in Texas, because the journeyman test gives you a lot of freedom there, and but it's a requirement for certain work. So depending on where you're going to wind up, what you're going to do, it might be worth looking into. It would be good just to get those things in your mind if you want to go and test into the IBEW. The Just to be able to think that way and to work that way, when you interview and you say, "Hey, I've got this, I've done this, I've been working on that," it it gives you a leg up on other people if you already have a basic understanding. So I'm going to upload some more work to Schoology, another quiz, kind of like we did last time. I've also got some uh, links to send to you for the book and be able to get you what you need that way. And then as we continue on through this, we'll be able to work towards having everybody on the same page. You'll be able to follow along page by page as you watch the video, and you'll be able to take those notes or highlight the book. It's digital. You'll be able to do that and work that way. So until I see you next time, be well, guys, and stay safe.